Good afternoon, everybody. Ready to get going with this awesome third panel. So if you're eating, just chew quietly. I'm Ellen Hanak. I am the director of the PPIC Water Policy Center, and I just this is my last week in this job, so I'm super excited to. Thank you. But I'm also very excited. I'm not going away. I'm just gonna better. Okay, I'm not going away. I'm just shifting positions from center director to be a senior fellow. And I wanted to also just give a little shout out to the woman in purple here, Letitia Grenier, who is going to take over as the center director. So we're going to be in extremely good hands, and very excited that she was able to come and meet a lot of you. She took time from her vacation, her well-deserved vacation between her last job and this one, to come out and meet you all, and is looking forward to meeting other folks in the Valley, because this is such an important place for PPIC's work. So we really appreciate that you're all here, and those of you who are online, thanks for joining us as well. So we've had just a really great set of discussions today. Heard from experts about groundwater management, about land management, some of the hacks people are trying, some of the great things that are starting to happen, some of the challenges they're still facing, and there's a theme throughout that of how do we work better together, and so that's where we wanted to really hone in on that for this take-home panel for you. And just by chance, actually, this awesome set of panelists has sat in a logical order, and that just happened. I did not instruct them to do this, but we thought we would bring together somebody from the federal level. I have here Adam Nichols from the Bureau of Reclamation. He's you're the regional resources manager, which means you manage the water division. So like CVP Water, Central Valley Project Water. If you got problems, talk to him. And then,
we've got answers.
And then next to Adam is Director Karla Nemeth from the Department of Water Resources, involved in all things water in California, including a lot of things SGMA, and a lot of things flood management. So Karla has been busy and in the region a fair bit this year. So really honored to have her here with us. And then, so Sarah Woolf is known to many of you, and she wears many, many, many hats. But the logic of having Sarah on this panel was a regional hat, which is that among her many things that she does, she's involved in a couple of the kind of homegrown approaches that have cropped up since SGMA to try to take a regional look at water issues and the broader issues of kind of managing sustainably the water blueprint for the San Joaquin Valley and the San Joaquin Valley Collaborative Water Action Program that Ann mentioned. Close? QAP. CAP. Okay. And then last but not least, down at the end there, we have a local official from the Valley, Mayor of Huron, Rey León, who also has multiple hats, is also head of a nonprofit focused on economic and environmental justice issues. So you can imagine I'm excited to get this conversation going with folks. And we've heard about sort of managing SGMA and water supply. We've heard about managing land. Now we're going to talk about how we make it all work together. The threads we want to kind of weave in here are first, some good news. Where are we seeing positives? And then some sort of
challenges and how to overcome them. At some point, Adam is going to share some really good news with us, which is that he came with big loads of cash. So I'm going to save that to a little bit later in the conversation. But I think I want to start by just maybe go to Sarah, because this issue of like, how do we get the region to work together? How do we get folks to work together beyond their small areas where they've had to be concentrating on some of these hard things about the groundwater plans? So tell us a little bit, Sarah, about those two homegrown regional efforts and what their goals are.
Thank you. And I want to personally thank Ellen for her work first at the PPIC. I think we all know in the water industry that what PPIC has put out around water has been very influential and helpful in all of us shaping how we move through these new challenges. And so for all the work that you have led PPIC through on this, I want to thank you. And I know all of us here in the room, thank you for your leadership on that. But
don't make me cry.
I won't do it again. But I think water in California primarily has been focused on single-purpose use. So as agriculturalists, we focus on using it for growing crops. Municipalities are delivering to homes, and environmental purposes are creating habitat. We rarely look at it and under the lens of putting it to many uses. And as it continues to shrink in supply, that is where we have found ourselves today, is every drop of water that we have in California has to be used for multiple purposes. It has to be generating benefit in many, many ways. And even our infrastructure that we historically built was single purpose. And we're now looking at how do we repurpose that to have multiple benefits. And oddly enough, the regulations oftentimes don't permit that. So there's many, many challenges that we're facing under this new dynamic. And I think a number of years ago, a lot of water leaders here in the Valley were spending a lot of time fighting with each other. And it took us a long time, but we slowly realized that we're not benefiting from fighting with each other. We're going to do a lot better if we start to have a more unified voice on what our water needs are here in the Valley. And so through that process, the blueprint was really formed. And it was originally a mechanism for local water agencies and white area landowners without a water supply to get together and really hone in on what are the infrastructure needs we have here in the Valley and how can we champion those together so that we have more than just one district saying I need this and another district saying I need this, that we had a larger amount of voices speaking for the same projects. And so that's where it started, and it's actually evolved into a very good place in that I think we have industry groups involved in that, we have some of the environmental justice community involved in that, and we talk much broader about those infrastructure projects and finding ways that there are multiple benefits to those projects and how do we push those forward. And so the blueprint is really taking on that effort right now in the Valley and providing a lot of good information as to how the importance of various projects and how we can look at them and support them. And then once, as the blueprint was formed, there was also a need to have a much bigger picture on beyond just agriculture and local drinking water needs. We really need to fold in the environmental component and members in the environmental community, because one thing I think in agriculture at least, we get a bad rap of, you don't want to do environmental, you don't want to do habitat. The truth is, I think in a large part, we don't know how to do the environmental component. We're farmers, we're growing crops, we're not really thinking about how do we do upland habitat next to my almond orchard. And so we spent, at the beginning of COVID, we started a program with environmental community, drinking water community, agricultural community, and the water supplier community to get together and start talking about the issues in California and the needs of water supply shortages and improvement of water quality. And we got to become very good friends through Zoom over a 2-year period where we spent a lot of time better to understand more completely what each different sector was struggling with. And that takes a lot of time because I think that's something that is not innate to any of us. So we are now at a point where we have a term sheet and some principles we are working on to move policies and actual action items that need to be fixed to be able to have some of these multi-benefit programs occurring. And we have a lot of members that have participated in the multi-benefit program that Anne spoke of, and working very hard on drinking water, on what the challenges are there to expand drinking water programs and make sure that we have a clear understanding of what the hurdles are, what the problems are, and how we overcome those, and speak unified to get those problems fixed. We have a work group on water supply that is working on, actually used the PPIC report as of late as to what the additional flows that would be available during high water events, rain events like we've had this year, that could be moved into the valley without any changes to any kind of environmental rules that are in place to date and the infrastructure that exists. What could we move into the valley above and beyond what we're historically doing? And granted, most of those would require doing additional recharge, but it's close to 1 million acre feet in high flow years. That is a lot of water. That is a big amount that we are short of, that if it's in the ground, we can use years later. So it's a very important component that we need to layer in. And then the ag sector, we're looking at recharge areas of hiccups and problems to getting actual on-the-ground recharge projects moving forward. So we're trying to find all these different areas where we can jointly agree that we need to move forward and have policy changes or help agencies implement these programs better. So that's the Collaborative Action Program.
Thank you, Sarah. I might come back to you a little bit more on that later, but I want to now turn to Rey. With your different hats, and you're interested in a lot of different aspects of managing stuff and making things better for your community and other valley communities. So just give us some positive news on some, an example or two of some good collaboration progress you're seeing.
Sure. And I sat here because I want to be last. I want to, guess it didn't work that way. Well, buenos días, everybody. My name is Rey León. My father arrived to Huron in 1951, undocumented orphan from Michoacan. And so we've been there ever since. If you've ever been there, Romaldo's Bar, that was my dad. From a farm worker to a bracero to a small businessman. So I grew up in the restaurant business. I tell folks I've been serving my people my whole life, like literally. But it's my pleasure to be here with all of you, Sarah, and glad to meet BOR, the BOR guy, and DWR, because you guys are neighbors to Huron, right? So, in terms of collaboration, there's no other way to do it. With what's occurring right now with the climate crisis, climate resiliency cannot happen without social cohesion. And without trying to figure out how we're going to work together, especially in the San Joaquin Valley, the west side, where the drought has been really impacting us tremendously, right? When I was a kid hopping in my family's restaurant, every lettuce season, which was early spring and late fall, there was like about, I think, 8,000 or more migrant farm workers coming through. So the traffic in downtown or on the main in the early morning and late afternoon, it's like downtown LA, right? Everybody was shopping, everybody was filling up, everybody was eating dinner at all the restaurants, people were renting out the extra rooms, garages, whatever. And there was just the economy would pick up twice a year, right? The winter, it would be dead, but it's all right. My dad would say, as a kid, I said, hey, Dad, why aren't you letting, at least the folks at the bar, just take a vacation for a month or two? He said, nah, we can't do that. They got families to feed. So I started learning about, just the sensitivity and really, I think, the consciousness of what it means to be a small business owner, right? Because at that point, then you're more of a family that's taking care of other families, right? And I tell my residents, my constituents, I tell them, Huron may be a city, but really it's a family of families. And from that point, we got to look at the work that we're doing. And if we don't know each other, we got to meet each other. We got to talk to each other so that we can figure out how to collaborate to make things better for the families. On the west side, we have a lot of farm worker families that are working extremely hard to provide the food that we ate today. But they're still paid just minimum wage. There's no retirement, on the most part, no health care. So that's very challenging for them. And that's part of the work that I do with my nonprofit, with the first EV rideshare program to take families to their medical appointments. We're able to figure it out so that they could get it covered. But there's a lot of challenges. And so it's important to have allies, friends, and extended family. And I appreciate Sarah's work with the recharge basing up on that side, which the city of Huron is able to take some of the credits. And we were diligent to drill a well. So when we pile up some credits, we're able to pull some water, mix it with the canal water, treat it. So now we got a little bit more water. During the time where we had a 25% allocation, we're pretty much hurting. Those people still sneaking in and water their trees, right? But a lot of trees died. And that's an issue of concern because you don't want these communities to not have trees. The sun, when it hits the ground, it's hard. It's really hot. And so we need those green canopies, right? So part of the work that we've done in collaboration is just that, right? Being able to get some of those credits, they were extremely mindful and thought of us, so we're able to make that happen. But we're also recycling our black water and making Title 22 recycled water. I think that's the case, right? You guys know more about water than I do. I'm regurgitating some of this. But so we're going to be using it to actually do some farming on 200 acres we are leasing from BOR to grow fiber. I'm thinking probably industrial hemp because it needs less water and it grows really fast. You could pull 3 crops in 1 year, and if we could make money off of that, some for the city, then it'll help us out. Being a low-income city is really quite a challenge. In the state of California, we're always like top 3 of the poorest cities, right? But then in terms of the revenue coming out of that area, it's in the millions, right? And so we're always working it to make sure that we're able to maintain lower water bills for our folks that are working too hard or pay, that much more. And so in terms of just working together, just figuring out what sustainable systems that each of us could participate in, contributing elements to make it something where it's kind of closed cycle. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're going to need, And just to extend on that concept of collaboration, we, through my LEAP hat, I'm an executive director, and I've been an environmental, climate justice, economic justice advocate for quite a while, leader. So I do that work under the Latino Equity Advocacy and Policy Institute. We got a grant from the National Park Services, a technical assistance grant. No money, just technical assistance. And so we're working with them and a couple of architectural landscaping studios or landscape architecture studios from 2 different universities, from down south up north. And so we're looking at the thousands of acres north of Huron, that haven't been really productive ever, I don't think. Growing up, I never, because it's a creek that got shut down with the levee because of the canal, right? That used to flow to Kings River, which used to flow to Tulare Lake, which is visiting us right now. I don't know if you went to say hi already, but so and so it floods, it shuts it down, and it's an area where cruising by there, going to later visiting my pops and everybody, I would see all those trees. I'd say, wow, this looks like a little forest. And Huron's 51% deficient in park space, green space. So I figured, wow, you know what? What's up with this space, right? And thinking about Nature Conservancy, a nature park, or, right now I'm calling it the Huron Hawk Nature Conservancy. I'm telling Sarah, she's a commissioner. We got to fake it till we make it, you know what I mean? So we're going through this process of engaging these master's students and to engage with the community so that we could kind of, visualize, what does this look like? How do we really do the natural thing so that we mitigate the particulate matter? Particulate matter is a huge problem in our region, especially PM 2.5. This here is probably more like PM 10. But nonetheless, because of the absence of local grasses and bushes and everything else that's meant by God to do that work, it's not there. So I also think, wow, well, all this other stuff that I used to think were like pine family trees of some sort, they're actually tamarisk. They fooled me. I was already calling it the Huron Penal Park, right? They got me. So it's like, oh, they're an invasive species. Well, that looks like a lot of work. All of that looks like a lot of work. So with the LEAP Institute, we have 4 greenhouses that we're building in 4 different communities within the Westlands Water District. So I'm thinking, how about we start growing a lot of these native plants? We start hiring farm workers that are displaced because of the solar parks or because of the fact that the tens of thousands of acres of almond are not labor intensive. Past 30 years, there's been an impact from that too, right? So then we start not displacing, but transitioning. Because I see that huge space also a space for education for the kids, outdoor bio-ecolab. I just made that up, And kids can learn about the importance and the need to be more conscious of the environment and how they're impacting it, right? But I'm also thinking with West Hills Community College, we talked, I said, why don't you guys develop a program? This is another type of collaboration, right? We got to get our universities, our colleges, every hat should be at the table. Because that's the way we cover all the issues for all of us, right? I told them, why don't you guys start up a program so then they could be junior rangers here, the Huron Hawk Nature Conservancy. Then they shoot up to Humboldt or UC Merced, whoever's got a program for forestry. Then we get them hired. I like to say, throw some brown into that green, So, a lot of the foresters are baby boomers, so let's take care of that, right? But let's start early, and everybody who educated in the process is going to be part of the solution, right? So, anyhow, that's different stories.
That's awesome, and it just shows the kind of energy that can be tapped over on the west side there. So we need more of that, right? So, Karla, I want to turn to you now. DWR has been involved in so many different ways in the valley. Before Sigma, State Water Project, but also with Sigma, really the kind of key agency up till now in terms of developing the regulations, providing technical assistance and planning funds initially, providing funds for project implementation, reviewing those plans. Some of them, they all got sent back for homework. Some of them passed, some of them did not. What's your temperature check right now on sort of how it's going and sort of what positive things are you seeing in terms of like collaboration and folks working together and getting to a good place?
Sure, you bet. So thank you for having me. It's great to be down here, and it's great to be down here with you. I'm not going to say anything more. I'll do it privately, and you can cry. But truly, it is exciting to be down here, and it's extra exciting to be down here off of this last winter. So for SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, I am a firm believer that that was the only law that we were going to get. That was the only thing that was going to pass was the law that we got, because it was fairly traumatic. I think every legislator from the Central Valley voted against it because it's really hard and it puts on the table just enormous constraints. But we needed to do something. And the law itself is not perfect. And I think we're starting to understand that. But it is the one that was able to pass the California legislature and get us on a trajectory to dealing with these challenges. And as that was happening, lots of folks were saying, this is going to be the most important thing to happen in California water in 100 years. And I understood that, I think, in a superficial way. Now, several years in, I really understand it in a much more visceral way, in a way that's probably different from the communities who are really experiencing it. But for someone like me who's been working on water issues in California for a while now, to my great relief, I think the need to manage our groundwater basins to something more sustainable for communities enables us to have a lot of other conversations about what do we need to do to deal with surface water supplies, and what are the infrastructure improvements we need to make to help shore that up? What do we need to do with the water market to adapt that for the future? And we've got this terrific history of fighting around over water in California. We're going to have that forever. But at least from my vantage point, because we now are getting more and more information about the challenge of getting these groundwater basins to a sustainable point, it just opens up conversations we weren't really able to have in a serious way. And I think that is intensifying, and that is a good sign. There's a lot of angst because as SGMA passed, really as, frankly, it was an outcome of the previous drought, not the one we've just emerged from. It was an outcome of the previous drought. And then we had that big booming 2017, and then we effectively went right into very dry conditions and an even worse drought. And the big kind of hangover is like, well, we all get is it ever going to rain again when we get these very persistent droughts? And just a lot of real sense of catastrophe around just these persistent dry conditions, the intensity of groundwater management needs. And then we had, 2023 to help remind us that there's actually quite a lot we can do and a lot that we need to be doing right now. Because we will have deeper droughts, longer droughts. They're going to be punctuated by increasingly extreme wet conditions. And we're really not quite ready to make the best use of those moments or those periods as we need to be. And so this year provided, I think, just a terrific example of the work that we can do. For the department, just organizationally, which I thought was pretty fascinating. We do flood protection for the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. Does not include the Tulare Basin, but right into Fresno, it does extend this far. But for the Tulare Basin, which was seeing so much active flooding, our flood department just we don't know the people down there. We don't have a lot of information, but our groundwater management folks did. And so they were able to get on the phone because they've been developing relationships with these newer local governments over the years and say, what's going on? How can we help? And that enabled us this year to recharge about 97,000 acre feet of water that we otherwise were not positioned to. That was a result of some streamlining that Governor Newsom directed his agencies to do. And I think it gave us a sense of the possibility. Now, I'm not advocating we do it in exactly the same way. I think there's a lot of folks, myself included, it'd be nice to have a little more organization around it and really know what's happening. And we're doing some of that work now, getting the water quality monitoring in so that we can really understand, what's happened with the recharge. So we know how much water was diverted, but we don't know the response to the groundwater basins. But we're going to start to see that really next April, May, June at the department. Folks will see it here certainly sooner, but at the department we'll start to get that information in and we'll understand, how did it work? What are things that we need to improve on? And that's a very different mindset than I think where we were just really 2 years ago. And so I'm feeling very positively about that as a big push. It's not to say that it's not going to continue to be quite difficult, but to give ourselves a chance to be optimistic for certain reasons and things to really organize around and collaborate around, I think gives us all, a lot of push, which is terrific. For the Groundwater Management Act, which is clearly going to be a significant land use driver, I'm also pretty excited because we got through the intensity of the review process. All those groundwater plans coming in, we had about a dozen that we described as incomplete. We really made use of that part of the law, which is to say go back, check your work again. We're going to need to see some other things. And about half of those that came back were successful, and they're now being implemented. And there's about 6 of them that are over at the Water Board, and the Water Board will perform its regulatory function, determine whether or not to put those basins on probation, which triggers a lot of state intervention. And I'm hoping that that is enough of a thanks but no thanks that will kind of push people together. But the observation that I would make is that most of those plans that were not successful, they were not successful for a number of reasons, but something common to all of them was a lack of coordination and collaboration. So we know that the groundwater basins and the basin boundaries are political jurisdictions. They don't always conform to, I think, some of the regional challenges that groundwater is now really fully presenting. And so for the folks who did some homework and really reached some kind of coordination agreement with their neighboring plans, they were more successful than the ones that chose to not do that. And even some are splintering further, which is really the wrong direction to be going in when we think about solutions. But for those that passed the threshold, the department is now 150% in the actual implementation of those plans. And groundwater management as a law that needs to be implemented on the ground is absolutely nothing if not iterative. We're trying things out, we're working on the recharge, we're understanding the effect of the decisions that we're making, we're collecting a lot more information that can help us understand where to do the recharge, where we have the right soils, and all of those things are going to suggest extraordinarily important points of collaboration across the board. So I'm very excited for the department to be now engaged in this sort of new phase of groundwater management and implementation, because it's all technical assistance, it's all really grant making, but also bringing folks together. And we have a unique opportunity as the flood agency for the state. Flood is also managed at the local level, is identifying places where we can, have a very constructive marriage between, water suppliers, groundwater managers, local flood control agencies, and we won't be successful if we don't have the counties and cities as the land use entities really working together in that context. The department is about to, or it's coming out today, yesterday, public review draft of the California Water Plan. It's going to be heavy-duty focus on climate resiliency, the need to do things at a watershed scale, and the way in which we do them needs to lift up communities that have really been left behind. And we have an extraordinary opportunity in front of us in responding to climate extremes to, I think, go back and do some work and protecting these communities from flooding, making sure that they have adequate water supplies. And then maybe I'll end on one little thing that I'm pretty proud of, and we talked about it a year and a half ago when we were still in the drought mindset. The department put together a program called Land Flex, and this was about trying to introduce more flexibility into the valley to help us deal with drought. And just to share, the state perspective with you all as local practitioners, that started because the state, we saw the drought deepening. We, have a lot of emergency provisions. We bring tanks in and we drill wells and we do all this other stuff. And we thought, what if we just took a step back and thought, are there ways in which we can incentivize at the local level ag practices, temporary fallowing, permanent fallowing in certain circumstances that would relieve pressure on these domestic wells that the state is already spending significant dollars, just doing these pretty haphazard, very emergency response oriented approaches. That was really the birth of that program. Is there a different way for the state to tackle this? Because if we don't, we're really just going to be spending money on more tanks and things like that. Maybe there's a different way to do it. And so That got a little bit of traction. Westlands participated. A handful of groundwater sustainability agencies participated, largely focused on smaller scale agricultural operations and in areas where we knew we had domestic wells that were very vulnerable to drought conditions. Well, then it rained like crazy. So we realized there was also real opportunity to think about this as a program that can also support land fallowing for groundwater recharge when we have these flood conditions. And so I really appreciated your input and your ground truthing when we were trying to figure out what to do with this kind of program. And that's one of the things I'm really going to miss about Ellen, so smart and knows everything that's gone before, and to pick up the phone and say, is this a crazy idea? What am I missing? What am I not thinking of? And she's very candid. That's crazy, Karla. No. This is what's going to happen if you go that route. But I use that as an example because I think there are ways in which we can approach both flood and water management, in particular groundwater management. You know, the third leg of the stool is land use. So there's none chance we make real progress for communities unless we're linking arms with local governments. And there are opportunities to really try new things. And we're just really excited about becoming partners with all of you and the work that we're doing with CAP and many of you in the room. So I'm optimistic.
Thanks, Karla. Okay, Adam, we're gonna give you the chance to talk about what's exciting for you and how that's going to help with the challenges this region is facing.
Well, thank you, Ellen, and I'm really honored to be on your last panel, so thank you. And Director Conant sends his regards. He wasn't able to make it today. There's other things that came up in Klamath Falls. We have emergencies everywhere. Klamath Falls is one of them. So I'm honored to be able to sit on this panel with this distinguished group of professionals, and I'm really excited to promote the opportunities that the federal government is bringing to bear with its resources and with the bipartisan infrastructure law, with the Inflation Reduction Act. Bureau of Reclamation itself is controlling $12 billion of resources to get that out to local communities, to get that out to our infrastructure program, our projects like the Bryant-Kern Canal, the DMC, and working to restore those facilities back to their designed and built capacity so we can move that wet year water when it's available. Subsidence has caused challenges to our facilities. We're working with the state, with our joint facilities on the San Luis Canal to try and get that back up to design and built capacity. We're also working with, we recently sent out a letter, late August. It was sent out by Director Conant to inquire about opportunities that the contractors and operators have for building infrastructure to mitigate for drought. And we thought, well, we'll get about $1 billion worth of proposals. It was a $4 billion program in the Inflation Reduction Act. We'll get $1 billion worth of proposals. We got $4 billion worth of proposals. And what was really exciting about that opportunity was that the South Valley folks, our Bryant contractors, our San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority contractors, our exchange contractors, all came together with a single voice and said, we need help. We need this down here. And in this collaboration, we're collaborating to solve these problems together. And I thought that was really an awesome opportunity. So not only do we have funding, we're also working on ways to expand our non-monetary resources. So this year was an awesome year for water year, right? The water was just coming from everywhere. There was a lot more. I know Aaron had a lot to manage out there off the Kuya, but I feel like we managed, and both Director Nemeth and Bureau of Reclamation, we managed this water supply as best we could and made available excess water supply and cut red tape and worked with our contractors to get that water supply to them. And I'm really excited. I mean, DWR put together a little paper, and we thought it was so good, that paper, we would like to do a paper on that too. So we put together a paper on all the awesome water that we also got out there, just to seem as cool as they were. But we got 500,000 acre feet of Section 215 water, which is our excess water supply, to our contractors throughout California, of which Westlands took 125,000 and recharged it. It's amazing. Like, it's super exciting times. We're all thinking about water differently now, and how to manage that resource in light of SGMA. And I'm really excited about the opportunities for collaboration. South Delta drought planning is going on. We're working with our contractors and our operators to identify new solutions to create resiliency and reliability in the system. Looking at our projects differently, do we need to operate somewhat differently to make this all work and come together? And I'm really excited too about the science that's coming together for some of this, some of the ASO opportunities that are measuring runoff and telling us.
Say what ASO.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Airborne snow observation. It's the snow runoff and managing that, and the technologies that are coming to bear through those forecasting efforts that will help us manage our relatively flashy systems much better and utilize that water supply. But I think you all want to hear more about the money.
So tell us quickly though, because we want to have time for questions.
Sure.
So just a little quick thing on the money.
Sure. So
then they can go to.
With the money, we are expanding our Water Smart programs. With many of you are aware of the Water Smart programs, we're adding $2.1 billion into our Water Smart programs westwide. There is. We're also plussing up that I talked about the $4 billion in Inflation Reduction Act, and in there we'll be making some announcements about programs that would be interested in funding in short order. $550 million in domestic water supplies focusing on disadvantaged communities. This is a really amazing opportunity. We're still working on how to get this out to the communities, but the awesome thing about this is that it's non-reimbursable. It's 100% funding for feasibility, for design, for construction. It's a really great opportunity for our disadvantaged communities, and I think that it will help cities like Huron.
We'll be hitting you up.
Fantastic. And so we're also moving to make more funding available for our aging infrastructure, small-scale and large-scale water storage projects. We have our wind projects out there, sites, Los Vaqueros, Del Porto, and BF Sisk. We're really excited about those and continue to move forward with those actions.
That's awesome. And this is, I will say, this is where people often are lamenting that the federal funding is come down over recent decades, and this is a moment in time where there's some real extra boost there. So it's a good time to come together and take advantage of that. So,
Ellen,
yeah.
can I take 1 minute? Because I'd be remiss to not mention our collaboration with Westlands Water District.
Yes, but 1 minute, because I want us to
1
get
minute,
to
all
audience.
right.
Yeah.
Time it, everybody.
Okay.
So we're working as a subcontractor with a grant that the Westlands Water District got from the State Water Resources Control Board. It's a MLRP. Don't even I can't remember the exact multi-land some. But anyways, the part. Oh, I'm sorry, you're gonna get ready. Go ahead.
It's a Department of Conservation multi-benefit land repurposing program.
There you go. Thank you. So the part that the nonprofit's doing, we've been doing a workforce development because it's important to, as I said earlier, transition. Transition those folks in ag, but also empower those kids in high school and middle school and throughout the school district so that they could be our future engineers. And, if there's not going to be no more farm work, then we better start preparing the folks to be able to get the education to fill in those slots of the future economy, right, and industries. But anyhow, what we're going to be working with is we're going to take on about 20 farm workers, and Huron's one of the first cities in the state to set up an ordinance for gray water, which you could applaud whenever you want. But so before San Francisco, but it doesn't make us more hippies. No. So anyhow, part of the empowerment and the training is we're going to also install gray water systems in the new homes we have that have already been built with gray water ready. And also some homes that have crawl space, the older homes in the community, and so we're working with the plumbers on that. So if we could get some of our folks to transition and get into unions, those are good jobs. and that's good future for their kids and for the next generations that follow. So we got to be innovative, and we got to work together, and we got to sit down, and sometimes we bang our heads together, but we got to figure it out together. And part of it is make sure that people have good jobs, good paying jobs with the benefits, and that their children have access to quality education, right? Okay, thank you, that's it.
Thanks, Ray. So I want to give a chance to the audience to ask these fine folks some questions. If you've got some, raise your hands, and folks will come around with microphones.
Thank you. Last year was a tremendous water...
Say who you are, Jesse.
Oh, Jesse Roseman. I'm with the Almond Board of California. Last year was a tremendous water year. I think there's plenty of lessons learned about how we can do a better job of capturing that, whether it's on the infrastructure, grower willingness, or even the policy and regulatory side. So just wanted, we talk about this coming year, or water year, also being big. Are we prepared? And what lessons can we apply from last year for this one?
There's probably room for various folks on the panel, but I want to go to Sarah first, because she's been doing this on the ground.
Yeah, we've done a lot of recharge, and the governors, and a lot in Huron, and in the Madera County area on the East Side Bypass, and then we've applied for appropriative water rights, which is a requirement to receive a beneficial use of recharge. And so we've been working through this appropriative water right process since 2019. And it's expensive, and it's laborious, and there are a lot of roadblocks in place. And so when this water year happened, we had permit applications in, and we were waiting for responses, and we were getting a lot of tension back and forth. And I think DWR did an excellent job of stepping in and trying to find solutions between both the applicators, the rechargers like ourselves, and State Water Resources Control Board. And we received the governor's executive order, which allowed for diversions to happen on flood infrastructure or on creeks and waterways that you could divert off of and use for recharge. So that really, and Karla mentioned it, it really opened it up for us to be able to do a lot of recharge this year. And through that, we are going to learn how to do it better. But, there were some things that we learned along the way on that we need to have a lot more. We need to do a lot more in those areas that we're not currently ready for yet, specifically around water quality and how we monitor for that. There's a lot still that needs to be done, but we can put in some barriers to help keep diversions and recharge happening in areas that are safer than other areas. But I think we were able to, out of that executive order, they passed a trailer bill that now allows for these diversions to occur until 2029, I believe that's the year. But we will be able to learn through that process, do these diversions. So I do think we're ready to jump on it when we get water this year, as far as diversions and recharge occur. And it will be a learning process that is not ending. So I think in that respect, we are ready, but there's still a lot more to be done, because ultimately recharging in and of itself is not a beneficial use, and you have to have an appropriative right to do that. So we will need to continue to work through that process with the state board.
Did anybody else on the panel want to touch on this?
Just briefly, so the Bureau of Reclamation its rights are a little bit different than others, and we have what's called Section 215 water, and we've had, which is equivalent to Article 21 with the state. And we've noticed there was some red tape getting some of this water out the door. And so we are looking for ways to cut that red tape, reduce that administrative burden, and getting these contracts approved in a short term, and working, and we set a really great model, I think, with the Water Resources Control Board this year on how to do a consolidated place of use that works for everybody, that allows that water to get out the door and to the users faster. And so moving forward, Jesse, getting at your point, we're looking at ways to make that move faster, and I think we have a good roadmap for that.
I would say from DWR's perspective, heading into this year, there are certain things we're doing differently. We've have some funding to do stream gauges, and we've been focused on areas where we learned this last year, where we have flood risk, or there's some real stream gauge need to help us understand how to get the recharge done and at what level. Also helps with applications for permits to get that work done. But from a department perspective, we now, as we, at the beginning of the year, we do flood preparation. There's a lot of interaction that happens between the department and local flood control agencies. We now have our groundwater management folks embedded in those discussions. So when we activate our flood operations center and our whole system lights up and we know which rivers and streams are going to get into monitor or flood stage, we now have our groundwater management people sitting next to our flood people, sorting out what we anticipate coming, and let's connect with the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and we really want to build on, I think, all those interconnections that were made last year, really on the fly, because we were, up until about December 15th, we were all focused on dry, and then it shifted, and holy cow. And so we learned a lot on the fly, but now we're pre-positioned, so I would expect we'll be if this El Nino develops, as there's a lot of chatter in the system that it will, we will see even more capacity for groundwater recharge happening.
Ellen, can I say one more thing? I think on infrastructure, something we've realized, I think specifically in Westlands, and also on those diversions we were doing in Madera, the infrastructure improvements are real, and they are major that we need to do to be able to divert the types of flows that occur. And so like in Westland specifically, where we can deliver water to every section of ground throughout the district 365 days a year, the outlets just aren't big enough when you have these high flows. And so we now need to spend dry years to expand those types of infrastructure. The pumps that we needed to take water off the bypass simply weren't available. So preparing for those things and having them at the ready is really an infrastructure need that's going to be throughout the valley that we're going to have to focus on and spend money on.
I just want to comment and say, what's happening with the recharge out there by Huron, that Sarah was a big leader in making happen. More of that needs to happen, needs to exist. When I go to Mexico, to Michoacan, all these, there's presas all over the place. And presa, I think they're underground water recharge or water recharge basins, right? And it's bodies of water that also people use for fishing or canoeing or whatever. So, enhancing, even communities say on those 3,000 acres that DWR manages and BOR owns, that creek hits a levee. So it's always going to flood. So why not maximize the opportunity of capturing the water for underground water recharge and probably put in a basin that maybe is turns out to be a small little lake, months out of the year. And when there's an overflow, then from the canal, maybe, I don't know if you could work it that way, you fill it in, whatever, with the overflow. Because what I do know is that when it overflows out there on the southwestern part of Huron, they put it into the canal, right? And so I'm thinking, hey, you're taking our water. Is that LA? LA stealing our water now or what? But just thinking about those type of measures and having more presas out there, and you guys might throw tomatoes at me, but there's a lot of tomatoes out there on the west side. But the Tulare Lake, why don't we keep it? That seems to be like the huge, underground water recharge, the natural thing that God created long ago. And I know there's a lot of people that are shaking their head. I see one right there. But, it's a beautiful thing, I think. But the other thing I want to mention in regards to gray water is the amount of water that is being saved by using gray water, not having to use expensive potable water for the trees, keeps the trees alive. We had a lot of them that died because of the 25% allocation. Well, we keep the trees alive, and we also keep the homes shady or cool. The streets are cool, and carbon sequestration, just a lot of positive things, right? And a lot of work, too. And we should do it at a statewide level for the regions where it makes sense.
So think big, but think local.
You start
All right.
local all the time.
I'm going to call on Don over there. Wait till you get a mic, Don.
I've got my hands behind my back, and I found out they don't let print reporters hold their own mics because they hurt themselves. So thank you for watching out for me. I know this is to Miss Karla and Adam. I know you don't necessarily are involved in the Is it back on? Okay. I know you're not involved in the biological opinions directly, but are you making provisions in case there's a big change for the the reconsultation at the Delta, or could any changes there impact your plans? That's what I guess I'm really asking.
And I'll just ask you both to be succinct because we don't have too many minutes left.
Yeah, so for the biological opinion, I am unfortunately quite engaged in that, as painful as it is. But in all honesty, yes, we are making some adjustments to the biological opinions and our incidental take permit under California law that enables certain off-ramps, if you will, from specific criteria when we have really big flow events, which was, I think, an improvement over, frankly, both the 2019 opinion and our 2020 state permit. So yes, I don't see anything in the reconsultation that will sort of disrupt the work that we need to do in terms of delivering surface water and getting some of these recharge issues addressed.
And I would only add that the collaboration on this version of the biological opinion versus the 2019 BIOP, it's significantly more. We're getting buy-in from the science and fish agencies. They're listening to the agricultural community. They're listening to the refuge community and trying to come up with approaches that will be science-based decision-making to help us improve our operations and use the resource to the best extent possible. I'm really excited about the future on it, actually.
Thanks for that question, Don. That's on a lot of people's minds. Okay, we could do one more quick question, or we could go to the lightning round. If I don't see hands popping up. All right, we're going to go to, did you have, sorry?
I don't think Aaron can ask a question. It's going to be too hard.
No, Aaron can totally ask a question. I was going to ask Aaron, do you have a question?
I really don't have a question. I just, in the spirit of collaboration, what I wanted to point out for folks that don't engage with the Bureau of Reclamation or the Department of Water Resources, Director Nemeth is really a champion, right? I can't believe you shepherded us through the drought into this flood and still answer phone calls. I've been on call. We need help. So, and I think you pointed out that your staff is out there, right, asking I'm texting with your staff last night at 11 o'clock at night. What is happening here? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? So in the spirit of collaboration, I think the audience ought to recognize that these two agencies and their staff really embrace the spirit of what government should be doing for us, is helping, right? And that's often difficult in this polarized world where we're dividing into two different political fields. Their staffs are putting that aside and saying, what are the resource issues? How can we help Aaron today? Or can Aaron help us today? So it goes both ways. We know the funding stream on the state side is going to be a really difficult conversation. We're glad Adam has plenty in his pocketbook. Adam, you're going to get a ton of text messages now. But we really do appreciate it out here on the ground, so thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, now we want to send you all on your way with either some. Yeah, I gave them an assignment of thinking about a 30-second answer, and it could be either what they're most optimistic about or what they most want to see happen next year. Those could be the same things. So I'm going to start with you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. So my boss likes to say that this is not your father's reclamation, but I like to think kind of more it's like your grandfather's reclamation because, our grandfathers had giant visions for water supply in the state of California, big grandiose plans, and they implemented and they executed. And that's where I think that we're heading towards again. We're trying to get away from the agency that says no. We're the agency that wants to work and collaborate, and we want to find those solutions. And we have generational funding right now to make that happen. I'm really excited about that in the future. We are your grandfather's reclamation.
I love that. I would say, on the spirit of innovation, because that's what we're all trying to do, to innovate, we have to give ourselves permission to fail. We will be more successful if we give ourselves permission to fail and learn as we go. And that's kind of a scary thing. I know it's a scary thing for agencies, certainly, but there is, I think, a renewed real vision for trying new things and rolling up our sleeves, and that's what makes me very optimistic. And that's what I preach at the department. Is thing one is we have to have our own house in order. We can't have any internal left-hand, right-hand problems. That is the thing that we can control to make us good partners for our sister state agencies like the Water Resources Control Board, or for local government partners. And getting that work done with you all, I think, is the thing that motivates me every day.
Okay, so for me, let's see. I'm very optimistic about the fact that everyone in California is recognizing that we have a water problem. And with that, we come to much better solutions in fixing it. And I think that we will find a lot of innovative things and ways to fix it. Don Cameron said earlier today that farmers like to go out and build things, and we are chomping at the bit to go build things. But we want to make sure that what we're building is something that's going to benefit multiple portions of California. So I'm optimistic about that.
And I'm happy to hear of what my colleagues are saying, BOR, DWR, innovation, also working with the community and the leadership of Sarah and the Wolves out there on the west side and Weston's Water District, because I think you got to be mindful of the people in the area. Right, it can't just be, oh, we need water, and then not pay attention to the health and well-being of the people that are making it happen, that are the food chain keepers, right, and have always been. And also optimistic about the Huron Hawk Nature Conservancy. We'll be talking some more, because that's not just underground water recharge, empowering that, but also the conservation of species. We got a bunch of cool animals out there I visit every now and then, and the carbon sequestration. I think I mentioned that, but jobs and education. There's so many positive things that could come out of it, or that will come out of it. Right? So looking forward to just continuing to collaborate and make things happen.
All right. Well, thank you to this awesome set of panelists. Join me in giving them a big round. And thanks to all of you for everything you do.